You asked me for feedback. And so this video is a feedback video. And so I think like Nexium from that standpoint is saying, you're doing really great. I'm trying to think of 5 ways that you could be doing even better. I do have to reach a little bit. But like, here's where we're at. Because I don't actually think that any of these problems are a problem that is like game breaking. If they fix none of these, the expansion could still go down as one of the great expansions versus one of the ones that we wish we hadn't played. Like, they could leave all 5 of these exactly the way they are, and the game could still have success, could still be enjoyed, people would still have a blast, and that's a great place to be, where everything can only be taken from good to great. It's a wonderful place to be. So on that note, let's talk about asmongold reacted to this post here about Dragonflight's biggest failures. Nexium is somebody that I've only ever known through asmongold. That's how I was first introduced, but I think had a really nice video quality and really thoughtful editing. So let's give it a go.
Biggest fails so far. Guys, will 10.1 fix Dragonflight? God, I really hope so. Yeah.
0. 0 ret changes for the 10.1. None. Not a single one.
Or is ret bad?
Garbage.
Let's see. Wait, 1 sec. Let me look at this. WoW, progress. Actually, no, sorry. Warcraft logs. Oh, let me link you guys this video too. Remind me to do that after this. Live, okay, raids. Let's look at statistics. And
McConnell only cares for ret.
Oh, is it not up there? Range of 1 week? Range of 1 day? I guess, oh, it's for Mythic. No wonder it's not working. Oh, what are you crying about? What is...
It's bad.
What? No, it's not. It's good.
That's bad.
You're above every single warlock spec in the game. Both the druid specs.
This is 4 weeks ago. It could have changed since then.
Drakthir, the fucking the furries, you're beating them. You're beating mages. You're ahead of every mage.
Yeah, but look at rogues.
They need to nerf rogues. Rogues are, that's ridiculous. This is ridiculous. That's a good point. Yeah, this is just fucking stupid. This is so dumb. Look at 75th percentile. What's this here? Let me see if I can look. All percentiles, 75th. Okay. Oh my fucking god, bro. Like, yeah, it's like, I think red is fine. It's just that, like, the other class, like, rogue is fucking broken. That's the issue. And, like, hunter and windwalker are also, like, insane. Basically, everything above Fury Warrior is pretty much broken. Everything below it is fine.
What's normal look like?
All right, let me see normal. Marksman's a little bit higher. You're a little bit lower.
The fact that you can play rogue any way you want and just utterly dominate the meters is crazy.
Warlock's beating you out. And let's see here, all percentiles. So, yeah, I mean, hunter, it's about the same. Actually, you're a little bit lower. Maybe that's because, like, red has better utility? I don't know. Or you can, like, immune more things.
What?
Well, I mean, you can bubble. What do you mean?
Did you just say ret and utility in the same sentence?
Yeah, is that bad?
Yeah, that's bad. We don't have any utility, bro.
Oh, my God. Okay. Let's see
I
here.
liked it
I'm
a
going to
lot more
look at
than the
this.
Beckon.
And,
you know, obviously with the quest. Yeah, buddy.
I like pulling
yeah.
my toenail off with a door more than slash beckon. Wolfman, thank you so much for 19 months. Earlier we had Chris come in with 17 months, Chili Demon with 2 years, and I'd like to stop and say thank you to members over on YouTube as well as subscribers on Twitch. Starting in February, the list that shows in every video thanking the members on YouTube is also going to include all Twitch. We'll update that on the 1st of every month, so you'll get 1 month either way, and we'll get that all formatted nice and clean. And I wanted to say thank you for that. It doesn't matter if you come over and you share Prime, or if you just do the $1 a month on YouTube, or somebody gifts you a sub on Twitch. being a member of the community that's tied to the fact that it's what allows me to do this full time. I really do appreciate, and it just wanted to find some small way of saying thank you.
We'll watch it, all right? Intro and hello. Here we go.
Terrible. It's just another buggy expansion full of garbage. Well, that's what most people would say over on the Classic WoW subreddit, but in all seriousness, Dragonflight has been an awesome expansion so far. However, there are some issues right out of the gate
overall
that have pissed off a lot of players and have taken a lot of fun out of playing the game for some people, and so we want to talk about that today, the things that Dragonflight needs to fix, or things that they've just done wrong or need to take a second look at. So let's get started. We have 6 things to talk about today with this video. 6 major things, some minor, but they are in no particular order.
Okay.
Let's dive right in with number 1. Locked content. This is something that you will encounter most likely as soon as you hit level 70.
What's this?
So we went to our community Discord, we paid attention to a lot of comment sections right here on this channel, and one of the things that people were complaining about with Dragonflight is the fact that as you level on the Dragon Isles, you will quickly realize that you'll hit 70 from just a minority of the content. And you know, that's not a problem. In fact, most people in Dragonflight are going to hit 70 before they even finish the main storyline. That's what happened with me.
Yeah.
I hit 70 when I had just gotten to Valdrakken, the final zone, so this expansion will rush you to 70 faster than J. Allen Brack running from Blizzard HQ. And in fact, I think this is a pretty good thing that the majority of quests are saved for alt playthroughs, endgame completionists, and people who just want to keep exploring after max level. This is great. However, there is a however here. The issue that we have seen from some comments across the internet is that the endgame content is locked behind the main storyline. High-end crafting gear requires you to complete the entire questline to unlock the Engine of Innovation questline, for example.
So
it
like
doesn't.
you're not able to unlock stuff unless you do the content for it. I feel like this is only bad if it's a system that you have to do on like every character. And like also it depends on like how long it takes. So like, for example, if doing the whole quest line takes less than an hour, I don't think that's a big deal, especially if the quest line is meant to teach you what to do.
And the new crafting system says that if you want something from another crafter, you can just request it. So like, it's only if you want to unlock the recipe for you that you need to do 3 minutes of effort.
Because you could easily say, oh, well, then why do it at all if it only takes less than an hour? But I think the truth is that because it makes it easier to do. Like, it makes you understand what you're doing. Absolutely.
NPCs that are important and portals in Valdrakken are also restricted. You gotta do the main story. Throughout the Dragon Isles, there are tons of quests and questing hubs that won't show up until you reach that part of the main story. And this attitude towards forcing players to do the main quest line before they can fully experience and explore what is a sizable chunk of Dragonflight's content is completely opposed to the rest of the Dragon Isles, which is so non-linear and freeing. Little bit of a contrast there. It kind of feels.
I think that Final Fantasy has this as well, and I would be okay if, for example, whenever you play an alt, like you don't have to go through all this stuff again whenever you play an alt, do you?
No.
Because like I think they should just have a story skip for second character. You do?
No.
You don't have to. Okay, then
No. If you log on to an alt, the moment you zone into the Dragon Isles, you just board the freaking boat. The moment you get off the boat, actually, when the boat zones in, you can jump on your dragon. It gives you all your tokens because those are account wide, so you can spend them however you want. Maybe you only have enough tokens to get partially down the tree, or you want to make one of those different choices at the handful of like left versus right moments where you either land and hit them hard or land and get a little buff. And so then you fly off. You can do the campaign quests from any zone that you want if you want to. You could also just not do campaign. That would be an option. Renown, as far as unlocking things like more dailies to do, cosmetics for your dragon or whatever, all of that stuff, that's all account wide. What is not account wide is being able to buy gear off the vendors, which means that it gates them from getting gear too quickly, I guess. I don't really see that big of a deal with that because Honestly, you could just restrict the rate at which you add gear to rep vendors over the course of an expansion, and it would kind of settle that, or make it cost enough zone currency that it means they have actually played. I don't know. It seems like a weird line to draw. And then recipes, which does sadly mean that if your main is not your crafter and you do have a crafter, they're going to need to do renown. However, whichever character chooses to do the renown carries the whole account. So you just need one character, could be your main, could be your alt, whichever class you like doing open world dailies on, and you just use that character and keep it at the max. And so once you cap it, which is currently 25 to 30, basically at 10 and at 20, you get an account-wide buff to any other classes that you realize, oh crap, I definitely also wanted that recipe. So by having your main already at level 20 plus, you would be getting 200% extra experience up to level 10 and 100% extra rep experience up to level 20, which means that if you have a particular recipe you want to get, it's not that big of a deal. Like, this, could it be more account-wide? Absolutely. Absolutely it could. The fact that rare spawns don't drop account-bound items, the fact that the recipes aren't account-bound, that's a bit of a bummer. I think in general, recipes should just be account-bound. Like, once you learn it, all the blacksmiths on your account learn it at this point. It doesn't really make sense to me not, because they're not tied to daily cooldowns or anything like that. So you're not... The fact that I could just log out and log in and do the exact same thing 500 times, why gate it? But it's not... We're making a mountain out of a molehill here.
It's fine. Like, I don't think it is unreasonable that you have to complete the storyline of the game that takes probably like 2 hours at the most to be able to unlock the rest of the content at max level.
I voice acted, sat and chatted, got lost in side quests, the entire thing. The entire MSQ. And when I cut it down, because I'd like to go make some videos out of it, and I only grabbed the parts where I was at least doing some form of questing, but that includes side quests, that includes chatting with chat, that includes different types of voice acting and riding the slow moving caravan, which you can skip. It was under 20 hours. Under 20 hours. I think Endwalker took me somewhere between like 40 and 70 on Final Fantasy XIV. So for WoW players to say, oh no, if I have to pay attention, it's half a game. It's half a game. It's nothing. It's an indie title. And you didn't have to do any of that. You could have skipped all those cutscenes. You could have run past the caravans. It is a couple hours of content tops.
Especially whenever most of it is already unlocked. There's just a handful of things that are not. Yeah, I don't really think this is a big deal.
It's like a holdover from previous expansions that's restricting the players and forcing them along a set path. However, having important content locked behind the main story is just forcing people to sprint through the story. Once I hit 70 and I realized that so much was locked behind the main storyline, I just sped through it as fast as possible and barely paid any attention to it because I really wanted to start doing some mythic dungeons. What can I say? And so yeah,
that's
it
the
might
first
be
thing I did
something
too.
that Blizzard wants to change in the future potentially. But
Okay.
what do you guys think? To be fair, this isn't really that surprising that Blizzard would do this because they want players to experience the story that they put so much time into writing and making the cinematics for and whatnot.
I do think that it probably makes the game better if you do have to finish the storyline to access things that make sense in the lore that you would have access to at the end of the storyline. If you have to do it once. I think that this immediately goes into the garbage the moment you have to do it 2 times. Like, do it once, but as long as there's an alt skip available, I see no problem with this.
The alt skip is not only available, you don't even have to click one of those dialogue boxes where if you miss it, you now have to do the beginning of Warlords of Draenor. Maybe there's a way to drop that quest and go back. I don't know. But it just handles it. It's skipped by default. It assumes that if you want to do the story, you only want to do one particular part. Maybe you just want to go do Azure Span again. That's it. You can just skip it. It's handled. And so I think it's fine. I think it's fine. There are a lot of people that don't necessarily like story in games. That's okay. But if people who don't like story get forced to do it, there can be good story in a game. But if story is made utterly optional and gets this very backseat, I haven't seen any games handle story wildly well where that was not a marquee item, where they planned what raid bosses we did around it, where they integrated dungeons, they integrated the world. And so from a design philosophy standpoint, the story comes first. Even if it's optional like Guild Wars, the story is still a major item with voice acting and all of that. So the way WoW does things is they also use it as a teaching tool. So this person is saying, Nexium is saying, I wanted to rush straight into Mythic 0. Fine, but there are a lot of people that have returned to this game after years away or have never played WoW and are asking if Dragonflight's worth trying. Questing is also a wildly good way, if you force people to do it, to accidentally instill some knowledge in how World of Warcraft works. How does questing work? How does renown work? How do we travel through the world? Where are the dungeons? It just handles it. So for 90% of players, 99% of players, this is the better route. It just takes care of it. And yes, there's a handful that begrudge that couple hours. But you were talking about somebody that was likely willing to push the Mythic grind hard. So they were going to go run Mythic for hours and hours and hours on end. 2 hours of main story. If you've been around a long time, there was a time when we used to have to attune to dungeons and get keys and all of that. Like, this is so unbelievably forgiving compared to WoW of the past that I don't think it's a big deal. Like, maybe it could improve, but I just wouldn't call it like biggest fails. If this is a big fail, Dragonflight is amazing.
But it just feels kind of like a holdover from previous expansions, like I mentioned before, and I don't think a lot of people like that. Number 2, buggy ass ores.
What's this?
If you guys have been on any sort of discussion forum about Dragonflight, good luck counting the number of screenshots that you will see of people trying to reach ore nodes that are floating in the middle of the sky or are bugged inside of mountains or are underground. How does this even happen? Don't they have to like manually put them in and position? Like,
maybe they're like randomly applied.
If you're mining in the Dragon Isles, like
that's fine.
I don't think they're manually placed. I think they have a procedural map that just creates the nodes, and then those nodes are fixed nodes. And the reason I think that is because there is no open world environmental storytelling happening with them. It would be interesting if you had nodes along a vein and they could spawn anywhere along it, not just these 4 fixed points that I can get a handy nodes for. An entire zone, anything there. And it would be interesting if they could spawn anywhere along there, but I haven't seen that. I feel like I gather the same node over and over and over and over. So while they don't feel manually placed, they also feel like they lock into the same positions. Maybe that's just in my head. But in addition to that, it would be interesting if they could respond to the world and help tell a story. Imagine if when we fight a rare spawn in the area that is fire aligned, all of the nodes in that area are those like primal fire ones or whatever. And so you're telling me that this area has been impacted by an extra level of fire. It just doesn't seem to do that. There doesn't seem to be any form of thought as gathering being an extension of world building. And as a result, that also by its very nature means that the quality level of the placement doesn't feel as careful. By comparison, the Dragon Isle supply packs, while sometimes they are clipped inside of things, they feel distinctly hidden. So if you do not have an add-on telling you there's one really close to the area and giving you a rough ballpark minus the verticality where it's at, they would be really hard to find. They're under tree roots, they're in bushes, they are tucked away very, very, very carefully. And it would be nice to see ores, herbs, things like this placed just as carefully.
Funny.
I'm a blacksmith and a miner on my Orc Warrior. You have 100% seen these floating rocks. Even if you don't...
So, like, I don't do mining. I wish that blacksmithing, like, I think it would be really cool if you had leatherworking, you could also, like, leatherworking, part of leatherworking was skinning, and part of blacksmithing was mining. I think that would be great.
It's been like this in previous expansions. The difference is they actually added something to the gathering system that made it engaging for more than just people who like gathering. This new knowledge system and specializations, it feels like I'm progressing something. And if you like the crafting system, the gathering system feels really hand in hand. So I have a friend who usually just does crafting and buys all of his materials. That's how he's always done it. And he's actually like, hey, so how do gathering farms work? Who can I watch on YouTube to learn more about gathering? Because I think I'd like to gather my own resources. I'm having a lot of fun getting my own stuff. And so those are people who this is going to be the first time that they've run into some common flaws within the gathering system.
Mine, you probably have passed by these floating dudes a couple of times and been like, what the heck's going on there? There's a bug.
Maybe it's like a random generation thing.
Massive problem. Like, it's like every single node is hidden or floating.
I do think that's probably what it is, though, right? Like, what do you guys think? That the reason why they did this is to prevent bots from going in a set pattern and to multiple different set locations to, like, add it to, like some sort of, like, random generation of where they are? That's my best guess. I think seeing a floating ore node out there in the world, like, yeah, obviously they shouldn't have this, but it's not really a big deal. I think it's kind of funny.
Something, but it is prevalent enough that every time I go flying around, I encounter at least a small handful of nodes that are bugged or hidden. So due to its frequency and the fact a lot of people are talking about it, and the fact that the nodes are supposed to just be a static part of the world, I have no idea how this has gone unfixed since they first added ores onto the Dragon Isles way back in development, back in the beta and stuff. And to be real here, Blizzard has this reputation of releasing unfinished and buggy expansions, and so something like this, albeit kind of small, needs to be addressed and needs to be fixed. If WoW is going to be the best, we need to demand the best from Blizzard, because after all...
That's true. It's true. Absolutely. There's no reason that ores should be spawning at the top of a tree branch. This is not good. Obviously, it's not a big deal, but it should be fixed. Which I think is fair.
The last thing Blizzard needs right now is players feeling like they are being sold something that is incomplete. Small thing, but get it fixed. Number 3, lag. Yeah, we finally arrived to what many consider to be Dragonflight's biggest con, and that is the lag, man, the lag. Now, in my own personal experience, despite playing on the full server of Moonguard US, yeah, I know it's a roleplay realm, don't make fun of me. Despite playing on a full realm, I have not encountered that much lag. The point is,
I have.
The devs actually put out a post about this. They put out what caused the lag, what they're doing to fix it. It was a cleverly designed system that didn't work out. We've all made the best choices that we can off the information we had at the time, and sometimes life just doesn't work out. They had backup plans, they had pivots, and they've done a great job of reducing this heavily, very, very quickly, without taking the entire game offline a crazy number of times. It's had to go offline some, but ultimately, I think it was a pretty good handling of the situation. It is a bummer, but the lag is something that has improved as they've gotten more and more of that system cleaned up. It effectively has to do with them having the server tell your client kind of what was unlocked for you, because this whole expansion, like, this trying to be this big narrative telling experience, and it was pinging the server too many times for those unlock requests. Is the door locked? Yeah, the door's locked. Is the door locked? Yep, it's still locked. Yeah, but is the door locked? Yeah, it's locked. And it was pinging the server thousands and thousands of times per player, and that was bogging the entire server down, and so then the server didn't have enough resources for the other things. So I think the idea of having, as we move into an age where we expect MMOs to not be static, as we move into an age where we not only want progression week over week, month over month, patch over patch, year over year, it would be really nice if we could also see progression throughout various different times of day and things like that. And so having a state machine and having that have the ability to be personal to you is something these games are going to have to navigate, and it's not going to be a smooth process. But it definitely feels like, is the door locked? Is the door locked? Is the door locked? And the Azure span was by far the worst of it for me. It's already gotten wildly better, and it was mostly launch week. Anybody who's been around MMOs for multiple launch weeks across multiple games knows to expect bugs. And a little bit of lag, while it was frustrating, is not nearly as frustrating as something like the Endwalker launch, where you got randomly disconnected and then you got put to the end of the line and you waited to make it all the way to the front of the line. And if you got kicked out of line due to a disconnect, or it thought you were AFK or something like that, you would actually have to go back to the bottom of the line to wait in it again. So some people were waiting whole days and not getting to play because they would randomly have a packet loss and they would go all the way to the bottom. Or games that just have huge glaring issues where there are items lost, things like that. Ultimately, like a little bit of lag. The important thing to focus on, in my opinion, when you're talking about launch week is, are the servers up? Yes. Are people that are putting a reasonable amount of effort during reasonable time windows getting to play? Yes. Does that mean somebody who said, well, I have 5 minutes to get online and it's peak hours on a Friday night, I can't believe they didn't let me in immediately? Okay, well, you and everybody else had the same freaking idea. Play a different time slot. I don't know what to tell you. Like, that's launch week. So as long as there are reasonable amounts of playtime being had by a reasonable number of players, I think it's fine. I would love to live in a world where we have these buttery smooth launches and everything's perfect. I think the first game that can do that consistently is going to make everybody else look like idiots. But in general, any MMO that wants to have 3, 4, 5, 10 expansions needs to know that some of them are going to have horror stories associated with them based on unforeseen expansion issues. It's why any new MMO that has not come out that tells you, yeah, our answer is maybe just don't be lazy devs and we're just going to have a good launch, is a terrible idea. Like, that will not work out, and that tells you that if that is their plan, that means they don't have a backup plan. The Zeppelins were put in Dragonflight because that is the smoother process for the server compared to portals. When the Zeppelins failed, they activated the portals as plan B. The reason you don't activate the portals right away is because if a person doesn't get through a portal, they click, portal, and now the server is getting hit with millions of requests and it brings it down. Your player base is basically DDoSing you. So they put the portals up. Players did exactly what they expected players to do, and when they clicked it once and it didn't work, they said, well, what if I clicked it 55,000 times? And then they took the portals down before the portals crashed the server for everybody, because people can't be reasonable. And so then it was, okay, how do we get the Zeppelins back up? And so that was that whole process. And all of that was planned. They had contingencies in place. They had devs that were in-game trying things. Some of them got onto the Zeppelin. Some intentionally did not get on the Zeppelin to see what happened. They had people at every stage. They tested it. They knew it's going to break. I just don't know how. We've done everything we can to plan for this, but let's wait and see what breaks. Let's be on staff. They had people who stayed and worked all night. They had people who got off early so they could go sleep and relieve them, so that there was 24/7 technical support. This is the right way to do this. Yes, it would be better if there just weren't mistakes or issues in the first place. We would all love that. And yet go check the trunk of most people's car or the back of any Jeep or underneath the bed of any truck, and there's a freaking spare tire. Why would you even have that? Why would you not just get tires that don't go flat, you idiot?
Lag has been really bad. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I have had so many lag problems playing this game. Like, shit that's like super slow, or like my abilities are taking like 3 or 4 seconds to go off. It's awful.
People have been complaining about the lag that has been polluting this expansion, especially in zones like the Azure Span, the Tuskar area, so much so that people are comparing Dragonflight's lag to Wintergrasp lag back in the release of original Wrath of the Lich King, for those of you guys who might remember that. Now, what's causing all this lag? Well, we're not entirely sure, but most likely it's all the various events that are happening on the Dragon Isles. Whatever the reason, this...
I don't know when Next Games was recorded, but it was a dev blue post, if you want to go look it up, that went over the lag, and it was responded to by a member of the technical team. Azure Span has the Tuskar, which I don't think you're a unique little snowflake if you're somebody who likes the Tuskar. The event that he's doing right now is like... It's like if you had a Black Friday riot like you see on the news, where everybody's running in to get TVs that are 90% off. Surrounding a cooking pot of soup. And everything you run around and do, you can randomly get selected to stir the soup, and then you have to like press a button and you're like spinning really fast, and then you have to like tenderize these meat heads, and so these huge fish heads come flying out, and you got to DPS them down, and you're doing all of this to progress this bar, and everybody wants to take part. And then all these little yes chefs, like when you push things, it's like yes chef, and so like it's wildly fun. And that means that if you have a system where having lots of players in one place is a problem, and then you design content that is accidentally good, yeah, that's gonna happen. That's gonna happen. There's about 95,000 people around that cooking pot. It's gonna cause some lag. That was the problem with Wintergrasp. Wintergrasp took the open world PvP of TBC and dialed it to 11. It was awesome. Like this kitchen duty it's so fun. If any of you have done the campaign quest and you think you're going to take a break, you got a little playtime on there, but you're ready to unsubscribe, go play other things, I get it. I encourage you to go do this before you log out. It's silly and it's goofy and it's what open world quests should be.
This is a glaring issue for many players.
This has been a glaring issue ever since Mists of Pandaria. Lag in this game, like world PvP, is unplayable whenever it's even 10 versus 10 players in an area. You already have lag. I have never played a game that is more laggy than WoW. Like with like a large scale game like this. Like PUBG is even better. Like that's actually, oh my god. PUBG is better than this. And it's like, yes, obviously, like, WoW is infinitely more complex than PUBG, but, I mean, let's be honest, it doesn't make it okay. New World? I think New World is probably still better. Like, they fixed the lag in Wars as well.
In this expansion,
or
and
they made it
needs
better,
to be
at least.
fixed ASAP. Number 4, getting weaker.
What's this?
So this is a big one. As you go through the Dragon Isles, you will find that despite you gaining talent points and better gear, higher levels and stats, you seem to get weaker compared to the monsters around you, or at least it doesn't really seem like it's making much of an impact. But maybe, to be fair,
I think that's okay. It would make sense that as you level up and you progress through the more difficult parts of the story, that the hardest parts will be at the end. It's like it would kind of be weird. I always thought this was weird with like Dark Souls 1, for example. Whenever, by the time that you got to Gwyn, you could just stomp the shit out of them. And like, yeah, maybe there's like a lore reason for this or something like that. But like, I thought it was kind of weird. And I think it makes sense that like you fight bigger and harder and more badass enemies. And at the very end, that's the hardest part of the fight, or that's the hardest part of the game.
That's not why this happens. So that's not what it is. It's not some clever difficulty scaling to make the world more scary. That's nothing what it is. And that's why it doesn't necessarily feel like that to all people. So this is by far the single best thing that has been named as a Dragonflight biggest fail, but it did not come from Dragonflight. It is merely present in Dragonflight. People felt this in Shadowlands. People felt this in BFA. What this is tied to is world scaling. So when you have games that allow you to go back and play with newer players, there is a question of what do you do so that you aren't just running around one-shotting things, because that's not necessarily fun to be a new player and you join a random dungeon with a random person, some guy runs ahead, kills the boss, and then it's over. Yeah, it's cool to get loot that fast, but like it just devalues your entire play experience. And it's one thing if it's a friend rushing you through Diablo 2, but for an MMO, it would be nice if your friend could come join you along the path. It's something that Final Fantasy story absolutely needs. And it's a question of how do you do this? And so Guild Wars does this by having everybody only gets to 80. That's as big as you can get. So you only need to handle scaling as far as what does a level 80 look like in a level 10 zone. So it's a one-time solution. As soon as you tune everything so that it feels the way you want, it stays that way for all expansions, past, present, and future. And so it just gets handled because they have a very simplistic progression system, because it's horizontal, not vertical. So you never have these gaps between somebody who's scaled the top of Everest and somebody who's the bottom. And yet, that's what World of Warcraft has. It's vertical progression. So let's look at Final Fantasy XIV. Final Fantasy XIV released A Realm Reborn back in 2013 as a vertical progression game. They knew it was going to be vertical progression from the very get-go. They had not announced their Heavensward expansion, but they knew this was the intention. They have now confirmed that after Endwalker, we will be going to level 100. They don't know what happens beyond that because they feel like 110 might be a little lackluster, but ultimately it's always progression-based. And every raid patch, which is every other patch, the even numbers, every 8 months, the gear level takes a massive jump, which means you always have people who are wildly more powerful than other people. Yet, it is a story-based game, which means even if you don't like the story, you're totally welcome and can have a blast in that game, but you will be clearing the main story, except their main story integrates dungeons and raid-type bosses. And so as you fight those, you need other people to join you. How do they funnel people into doing content that's way old? Imagine if Wailing Caverns or Stockades or Scarlet Monastery was mandatory. How do you handle that? There's nobody that wants to run it with you at 2 in the morning and you're a DPS. They created what's called a roulette system. This basically allows players to agree to run a random dungeon in trade for rewards that are relevant to them at end game. They don't get end game loot because all the dungeon loot is item level locked in Final Fantasy, so it doesn't scale up or down. And so it's just the trash that it is. But you are getting the basically tombstone currency that is necessary for you to stay caught up with endgame at a reasonable level. And so this creates an entire habit of all players being willing to run content that is 1, 2, 10 years old. They don't care, and they just do this. And so this allows the roulettes to hopefully minimize the amount of time that a player has to wait. This was put in long before any system of AI could run with these players, and so this was the system back in 2013 that was designed to make sure that veteran players would play with rookie players and feel it was worth their time even if they didn't know who those players were and would never interact with them again. At the time, this was just a unique kind of feature that some games have and some games don't. Don't worry about it. But what ends up happening is after a decade goes by, this very, very cleverly accidentally makes sure that your legacy expansions age very, very well. And if you ever need to do an item level squish or a character level squish or anything like that, this piece already just foundationally handles it. World of Warcraft never did this. They never did it. And so when they started wanting people to be able to level through the world and have the quest scale and have the mob scale and have players be able to run with players of differing difficulty and all of these things, there was no basis of doing this. That's not how Classic worked. If your friend was level 60 and you were level 20, they would just nerf your experience but one-shot everything. So if you needed the final boss as a quest and you wanted the loot, that was a really good thing. If you wanted the good experience, that was a bad thing. You only need to play with people that are at your exact level. And so what that ends up doing is saying people who are at this point on the mountain need to run together. And if you start running up the mountain really quickly, you need to find a new group of friends up here. And if you know somebody up at the peak, that's super cool and all. Don't do anything with them. And so I literally had characters that I would only level up when my friends were online so that our characters would stay leveled together, because otherwise they couldn't play together if we progressed differently. Turns out, after 5 or 10 years goes by, that doesn't feel good. And so what they did is they put in a system after the fact. It was not designed to have this in there. The content was never meant for this, and it is called world scaling. World scaling brings the entire world up through your eyes. You put the world's craziest glasses on, and the entire world looks centered around you. You are now the sun, and everybody orbits you. So, all of your party members in a dungeon, exactly your level. Doesn't matter if I had to bring them down, I had to bring them up, they're your level. All of the monsters in the world, they're your level. Everybody just gets brought to you. That way, it functions just like Classic would have if they were your level. And so that means you are always doing damage to things that are appropriate level. If you level up mid-dungeon, everything levels with you. And so everything is plus or minus your level. And then to make sure that we're not getting too much experience from doing things like running starting zones, they can put a cap on some areas. And so they can say, this one will scale with you, but only to this point. That way, A, we're not running low-level content and getting end-game relevant experience. And B, we do have areas that we get to feel like gods because it is kind of fun to occasionally go one-shot things. So that's the general basis of it. But now, how do we calculate power? The way I get more powerful is I slowly build up my level. I build up my character. This RPG element, Ian Hazzikostas has described the relationship between this and things like D&D as an important factor. And so as I gain levels, it should feel substantial, like I'm invested. I'm getting new skills or new attributes or new talents or whatever, and I'm getting new gear. Gear lust is very, very real in World of Warcraft. And so I should feel more powerful. Okay, so that's happening. Awesome. Everything's feeling awesome. Except that everybody else got more powerful too. The moment I leveled up, all the monsters in the world also leveled up. Which means anytime I gain gear, it has to be substantial upgrades to make me feel powerful. And it is. The quest feeds you regular items that are wildly better. I had one item at one point on an alt go up 100 item levels in one go. Not common, but it did happen, and it was awesome. I could feel it immediately. Rare spawns all over the world, dropping all sorts of loot. Little backpacks and loot all over the ground, and as I pick those up, item level increases there as well, regularly as I'm leveling up. Because all the items scale to you. So if I'm 67 and I find a piece of gear, it'll be a 67 version piece of that gear. So I don't find anything that's like, oh crap, I found the 62 now. Nope, it'll scale up. And so that feels great. Okay, well then what's the problem? What are they talking about? What happens if you accidentally level up and didn't find any gear? Well, now the entire world leveled up, but you didn't get any more powerful. Because your power relative to the world is determined by how your item level compares to your level. So if a really, really good whatever level, really good level 60 has item 250 gear and you have 260, you're a god. If you have 199, you're a bit underpowered. Fine. Now let's take that exact character. Let's level them up 2 or 3 times and they just never found any gear. It happens. Now they're level 63, 64, something like that. They've only released maybe one set. They've gone from 260 to 261. Now, their item level, relative to the level they are, is actually much less God mode. So they actually got weaker. And this feels incredibly potent when you hit max level. Because what is a high item level for a level 70? A max level character in Dragonflight. A high item level is 370, 390, 420. Those are high item levels. What are you when you hit cap? 310? 330? Right? So you, relative to what is high, aren't that good. And so you actually feel your weakest. And this happened when this rolled out in BFA. And with World PvP on, a fresh dinged max level character, which was what, like 110 there, 120? A fresh level 120 could run across a brand new in the expansion character who still had their previous best in slot raid gear from the last expansion, and they would get dominated, utterly destroyed by the lower level character. You got PvP on, you've been working hard, you stayed up all night, you're max level, I just put a whole bunch of hours in, I did today what others can't so I can do what others wouldn't, so I can do tomorrow what others can't. That's the phrase. I did today what others won't, so I can do tomorrow what others can't. I push hard. I'm max level. I am going to use that to dominate that guy who's 9 levels, 10 levels lower than me. No, you're not. That guy's about to smash your face in because your item level relative to your level versus their item level relative to their level, you're the weaker one. You have the weaker gear ratio. And so that's what came out of this scaling system, whether it was intended or not. And so you absolutely do feel weaker. This came out of trying to add a relevant scaling system to a game that was not ever designed to have one. It's why time-worn artifacts exist within crafting. It broke all sorts of stuff. Chromie time feels weird because Chromie time is a band-aid on a system that was never designed to function like that. These expansions are not meant to work this way. Having gear from previous raids now equipable at level 35 or whatever is weird. It is. But it's them trying to say they have one of the largest backlogs of available content in any game, and yet the vast majority of it feels locked away by being obsolete. The term in real estate is functional obsolescence. This idea that something exists but is no longer needed. So if you have basically like a clothing line for hanging up things, that's functionally obsolete in a house that has a dryer. It's not something that most people use. And so you have it, but it really doesn't have any value. And so they have all these old raids, but they don't really have any value because the vast majority of players don't feel any use for using them. And this system was a chance to go back and make that the case. If those things were account bound, bind on equip, I would use them in the place of, they could make them a little bit better than heirlooms, and I would transfer them to leveling characters. That'd be awesome. And then I would feel like, hey, I'm running old raids for a chance at mounts on my max level character. I'm going to transfer all these items off to the right gear type of an alt. And then that alt's going to equip them, the token, their tier sets or whatever. And then I'm going to level up with my tier set. It's going to be great. They could put an upgrade system in. So if it's level 35, I basically put a Time Worn artifact on it and it upgrades to that character's level. Whatever. It doesn't really matter. Anything below max level in WoW doesn't matter. So it's their step towards rediscovering the fun. But it is flawed because it was done late, and it will always be flawed. But this is by far the biggest fail that we've found in Dragonflight so far.
It's a scaling issue, yeah. It's because of item wall scaling, true. Well, it's also, I think that, yes, it is because of item scaling, and this has been an issue with every expansion. Like, at the end of an expansion, your character feels better to play than at the beginning of the next expansion, generally. Because you have, like, a bunch of new toys, you have, like, your stats that are min-maxed, you have, like, really high, secondary stats, like, 30% haste, 20% crit, etc. And you go into a new expansion and you don't have that.
A lot of us are just too polluted and ruined by classic WoW where the gear is so impactful, but I don't know. In dungeons, level 70 players do minuscule damage compared to scaled up level 61 players, and that's strange. To be fair, this is
this has always been a problem with scaling, and this has been an issue for a very long time. This was an issue as soon as they introduced scaling. People would go in with like level 15 priests and just like solo dungeons because of the way that they're scaled with discipline.
Exclusive to Dragonflight, and it has been present in almost every expansion since Legion when scaling was added.
It causes some weird stuff with DPS meters because, well, you're seeing everybody as your level. So, like, if you ask me what your DPS is, I'm only telling you what your DPS was if you were my level, attacking things that were my level. But what ends up happening is, imagine that an optimal rotation at level 15 is 1, 2, 1, 2. And you, being the amazing person that you are, press 1, 2, 1, 2. You are now doing optimal DPS. Perfect DPS. And if they give an ability that's a little overtuned and you unlock it, and now it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and you're perfectly capable of doing that because you're amazing. And that's why you hit subscribe and follow. Thank you so much. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2 is now way optimal. And somebody up at cap on some rogue has 67 things to keep track of, and they've got to have 90 actions per minute, 200 actions per minute, 500 actions per minute, and they're making mistakes, and it's crazy. You're better because you're a perfect player. Like, they tuned you to be perfect, and you did it. You passed the test. And so you, on your easy mode Guitar Hero, are scoring a higher percentile than your friend that's playing on expert. I mean, what else can they do? They have to give you the good DPS. You didn't miss a single note. You did it. You're amazing. And so there are some classes that feel ridiculous. I was running the other day and, like, I don't know what level range I was in, but whatever level the monk was that was with me in some low-level leveling dungeons was smashing things. Like I was with people that I know how to raid, they know how to play their classes, and this monk on one of the pulls was, like, on one of the dungeons was pulling, like, half the party's DPS. Just all by themselves. Just utterly wrecking things. And I assume they were incredibly well geared relative to their level, and they were pushing their buttons in the right order no matter how few buttons they may have had unlocked at that point.
At least for myself, the only time where I felt like my gear was really making an impact in the open world is once I was fully decked out in heroic dungeon blue gear. I don't know. Maybe we're all just bad at the game, guys. Man, if only there was a bad at every game t-shirt that we could buy over on the Nixium merchandise store. Like, how crazy would that be? It would just be perfect, wouldn't it? Point is, I think quite a few people feel, including myself, that Blizzard might need to take a look at scaling again with the current World of Warcraft game, because
I am a big fan of not having any max level scaling. I think that it's super cool whenever you can go back to something that you previously had to take like, you know, a couple of minutes to beat, and now that you have like all of your raid gear, you can just fucking beat the shit out of it. You can just stomp it, and it's so much better. It's so much more enjoyable, and to have like harder content in general, I like that a lot more. There is no max level scaling, dude. Yeah, well then I'm fine with it. Yeah, if there's no max level scaling, then it's okay.
There's none.
Really want that.
Yeah, once the monster is max level, that's it. That's as hard as it's going to get. So it only gets easier across the course of an expansion.
Next piece of gear to really change, and we want to feel it, you know? But
I think also the reason why you would feel the upgrades in Classic WoW is because you got so few of them. And I think that's another big reason. It's like, for example, whenever you get a new, like, let's say you're a mage and you get your Staff of Jordan at level 34, or your illusionary staff at level 30, or at the Staff of Jordan is 35, I think. And then the illusionary staff from Arcana Stone is like 32 or 34. It doesn't really matter. Point is that whenever you get this item, the odds are the previous staff that you had was from like level 21 or something like that. So you've played the game multiple days without getting any fucking upgrades. Then this shit pops out and it's totally different. The problem is you level so quickly in retail, your gear isn't caught up to difficulty. There is that, but I think also like you're getting gear constantly though.
But keep in mind, the first fail was that you had to do a 2-hour MSQ to get all the way to cap. So you're leveling, if you're speed leveling through this expansion, you're leveling at most a single level takes you a half hour as a casual player. There are people that have done this entire level grind like sub 2 or 3 hours. If you took your time like I did, you did this entire expansion over, I think I did, so there were 4 zones, so I did 4 play sessions. And so I sat down and did 1 zone, and when I finished that zone, I logged out. And I did that over 4 separate times. But that means in each of those zones, I was supposed to level 2 or 3 times, right? And so a piece of gear can't last that long. So if this is considered a fail, the first thing can't be a fail, because the first thing's what caused this. And so if you are fixing it the way he's saying, like, man, I really wish I got to spend multiple days with a piece of gear. Well, now that first thing, that can't get fixed because everybody was complaining about having to level for, I got to level for 2 whole hours. Oh no. Okay, well now you should have to level multiple days per level. Like, that's what you asked for. You said, I wish my gear felt impactful. Awesome. Then we are only going to give you 10 drops during the leveling process. That would suck. Like, Loot Pinata feels better. Especially when you look at the fact that it unlocks all sorts of transmog and we have all sorts of sets, and this guarantees that bad drop rates is occasional gear versus good drop rates is insane amounts of gear. Like, the loot pinata is what causes this problem, but the loot pinata happens because we move through the world unbelievably rapidly. It's really not that much more loot compared to Classic, but after a warrior, I had to sit down and prepare like an epic feast to recover because I took on 1 hog 2 levels below me. Oh my gosh, how am I gonna make it? I'm gonna have to eat. Oh, I'll probably need a nap after that meal. Now, the quest said pull 10 things, so I pulled 15 just to be sure.
Like, there's just so many more sources for gear. Gear doesn't feel as impactful because it's being changed so much more often. Like, for example, whenever I was playing in AQ40, I didn't really feel that much more powerful in AQ40 than I was in BWL. It was about the same.
Know who didn't get any weaker in this expansion? Yeah, number 5, broken tanks. No doubt.
It's fine. It's fine.
look, no, guys, listen. I'm gonna tell y'all something. Like, that's not how it is.
It's fine.
Tanking is totally fine in Dragonflight. I know that there are some people out there, we call them haters, that think that tanking is like broken or something like that. They're totally full of shit, okay? They're just hating.
If it's so good, how come when I go to join a pre-made group, they're always looking for tanks and healers? Like, if it's so good, why aren't people doing it? I'm having a blast being a tank. And the fact that they let me pull, 2 or 3 or 30 times as many mobs as you, that's really your problem. As somebody that plays a warrior in Guild Wars, a warrior in Final Fantasy XIV, Guild Wars works a little different, and a guardian druid in WoW, I can tell you with no bias that tanks are fine. Tanks are fine. It's fine. Let it go.
For no reason.
You guys have seen this bald-headed attic-dwelling goblin running around on his stream, pulling entire zones and laughing about how broken tanks are in this expansion. I mean, just listen to this smug bastard.
Okay. And that's just how it's...
Is he going to show the broken part? Or is he just going to, show him regular questing?
done.
Yeah, it's true. Tanks in Dragonflight have been broken as hell since launch, and this has gotta be addressed. Now, I'm sure that Blizzard is going to be nerfing them as soon as possible, but...
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and let's just be honest here for a minute. You guys want an actual clip of how good tanks are? Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can find this here. Which dungeon was it?
I've actually been notified while he finds this that there is something going on with tanks in 14 as well. Shake it off. Oh, yeah. This seems fine. This seems fine. Shake it off. Yeah, this seems fine. Warriors in Final Fantasy were a very well-balanced tank for any casual content in that people feel stressed when they have to heal. People in MMOs oftentimes feel like, I don't want to heal because it's too much pressure. And so warriors do a really, really good job of saying, yeah. So the number got a little bigger. It's fine. It's fine. I think you're supposed to have life in the tens of thousands. And so what you want is you want to be able to take the pressure off your healer as a tank. And so what this does by protecting my party, me and those around me, for anywhere in the ballpark of 10 to what appears to be 150 times the amount of life they have, it really just takes the pressure off the healers. It's an incredible kindness that warriors provide to healers, that if you want, you can learn the button. You want to log in as a healer. You've hit max level because you did any number of ways in Final Fantasy of hitting max level without learning your abilities, and you want to read your tooltips mid-combat. I've got you. Don't even worry about it. I can handle it. As a matter of fact, multiple times from when Endwalker launched to now, I have run into new dungeons and the healer has died, which then allows the DPS to die because they're weak. And then I have gone ahead and just finished the boss by myself because that's just good balance. It makes sense that a tank should be able to solo a group boss because I'm the tank, right? I'm a tank. I'm supposed to take the hits.
A beautiful, sexy, magnificent beast, baby. 19! That's just one more to go. Yeah. I love clapping weapons, man.
I think it's fine. I think it's amazing. Anarchy being here 19 months. This doesn't seem like a fail in Dragonflight. If as a Guardian Druid, I could go ahead and just beat the boss for everybody, that would be such a kindness. Tanks are sometimes seen as a little bit of a leadership role in a group. They kind of lead you through the dungeon and all of that. And it just makes sense that your kind of team captain would be able to go ahead and just kind of finish off the last 1 or 2% or maybe 85% of the boss.
I'm trying to remember what the dungeon it was. Let me just go ahead and double check. Where was it? Is it maybe this one here? I think it might have been this one. No, it wasn't. What was the dungeon that I just pulled everything and like I didn't die and I said don't tweet this out? Which part of it was it? Was it Neltharius? No, it was another one after that. Yeah, no, Neltharius, it was that was one thing, but no, it was something to like out of this dungeon. I just don't remember what exactly it was. Oh, fuck. It was the academy before the tree boss. Okay. That's probably what it was. Let me go back and double check. Okay. Academy before the tree boss. Okay. Here we go. Yes. All right. I'm going to try to do the big pull.
Why?
To see if we can. This is a mythic. Guys, this is a mythic +8.
I have no CDs.
Give me a second.
I believe, unless I misread the situation correctly, that his healer just said, will you please wait 20 seconds for cooldowns? To which he responded by pulling.
Please, if you could, clear them out while we realign the life magics of this place.
I feel like it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So far, it doesn't seem broken.
Swordfish down.
Okay. They've lost a DPS.
Lloyd down.
They've lost another DPS.
I don't even think anything happened to him. His health just went to 0.
They've lost
Follow
another
down.
DPS.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Good.
You can see, obviously, our healer's about to die here.
Okay.
Healer
healer's down.
Everybody's dead.
For those of you doing math at the home game, he is in a mythic +8 and has lost all 3 DPS and the healer over there. And so he is down to just the tank, with what looks to be several pulls worth of monsters remaining.
Except me. They all have raging too, because they're all low health.
I'm coming to pop a CD. I can land hands you.
Swordfish comes back.
Okay. People have started making the run back from the beginning, so that they're now making the run back to him, so that they can join back into the pull.
And Swordfish dead again.
Okay.
McConnell dead.
Okay.
People are going through their second deaths.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is, you know?
It is what it is.
Man, I love playing
I'm waiting for this to show me where Prot Warriors need a nerf. I don't think we've gotten to that part yet.
melee.
I love playing tank. Can you guys not put this one on Twitter this time, okay? We've already gone through 4 nerfs. Please.
Yeah. It's a good time. It's a very, very good time. I think tanks are actually probably... I think the only problem with tanks is that they don't do enough damage.
At the time,
That's a valid point. If we think back, that clip lasted a very long time, and since they obviously showed that DPS and healers can't stay alive in a mythic +8, it really just sucks that that pull had to last so long. And if they would up Prot Warrior damage, the pull could have ended a lot faster, and that might have allowed people to stay alive on their second life. They died the second time because the pull continued to last. And so if they would up Prot Warrior damage, then players would obviously not have to die as much, and that would allow the tank to be responsible for like more damage received. As opposed to right now, where like when you look at the total number of deaths and total amount of damage received, like there's a lot of stuff going out on other players just because it's not ending quick enough.
time of me writing this video and narrating this is not yet the case. So hopefully it's coming soon. And if they have nerfed them at the time of you watching this, well, excellent. How the hell did this level of class and spec unbalancedness, brokenness, whatever, make it through the beta? I mean, come on, Blizzard, get your act together. But I guess if you're a tank out there, you probably weren't complaining. I guess you guys had a great time. But let's move on to the final point.
I'm not even the good tank, and I think it's fine.
Number 6, a lack of early game. To be honest, guys, there really isn't that much to complain about with Dragonflight. Dragonflight is a very solid expansion, and don't watch this video assuming that I am like hating on the expansion or spitting on it. This is just...
How would anybody assume that? As somebody that has helped run Work to Game for several years now, I started it with my friend Brian, and now I run GamingKinda in addition to still collaborating on Work to Game with Brian, who runs Ginger Prime on his own. You know, we've been accused of things based on just our title, and so Nexium's here saying like, "Hey, I don't want you to think that I hate on Dragonflight. I don't want you to think that like I don't like it. I don't think that like anybody should think that. Like, how would you even know 10 or 20 minutes into a video as I compliment the expansion after 4 or 5 you know, just examples of things that I really don't like? I don't actually think that people stand a chance of getting the wrong idea. Obviously he loves the game, and I don't know where anybody would get the idea that he doesn't. I mean, why would they even think that when he's talking about WoW Dragonflight that he thinks it's anything but good? It's not like it has any like big failures. WoW Dragonflight is great, and obviously 10 minutes into the video is the perfect time to tell me that it doesn't have any big failures. So like, he doesn't even need to say it now. Like, we all know he loves the game.
Just me offering a couple of criticisms to make the expansion even better in the future. But there is one thing that I feel really is lacking in Dragonflight, something that I feel that Blizzard really should take a look at in the next expansion or maybe down the road with Dragonflight, and that is simply that the early game really was not touched with this expansion. Krendor and I recently talked...
I mean, they did do the Exile's Reach, and I think that for a new player, doing Exile's Reach is a good experience. Like, if you go into the game, you play Exile's Reach, and then you go through one of the expansions, I think that is a relatively decent experience. I don't know exactly. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect or anything like that, but I think that's generally what it is. Yeah, leveling with new talents is a huge improvement. Yeah, I would say so.
About...
And ideally, in my opinion, Shadowlands was not told in a way where it could take the place of BFA. So when Exile's Reach was added, BFA was now going to be old, and Shadowlands was becoming the new shiny expansion. And so there was an assumption at the time that when we roll into whatever comes after Shadowlands, which turned out to be Dragonflight, that it would be Exile's Reach, then Shadowlands. But as we got to know the systems of Shadowlands, the story of Shadowlands, it didn't really make sense. And so they've left BFA as the default new player experience. However, I think that Dragonflight actually does a really decent job of telling a good story, introducing a lot of basic quest mechanics in a zone that is engaging and fun and rewarding very early on. Imagine somebody who doesn't have the money for like unlocking the different mounts and flying mounts and what do I even do, and I don't have any mounts unlocked, but they just get dragon flying handed to them. Dragonflight, in my opinion, if it were not considered the newest content, if it were just an old expansion, we're in 11.0, that stuff's not even hard anymore. Dragonflying, in my opinion, Dragonflight as an expansion would be a great place to start as a new World of Warcraft player. If we paired that with something like Chromie Time, I think it would do a great job of getting people from 1 to whatever it's supposed to get them to, I guess 10 to, once they finish out Exile's Reach. So in my opinion, what Dragonflight did for the new player is not yet available. What Dragonflight did for the new player, what I hope they do with Dragonflight, based on my experience so far, is what I think they did really well is when we go into 11.0, 2 years from now, way in the future, 2025. And so when we charge into 11.0 in 2025, I hope that Exile's Reach goes straight into Dragonflight instead of BFA. I think that the story is told in a way where you're not like, what the hell is a troll? And why am I even here? And why is the world shooting out Azeroth? I don't know what's going on. No. Is it Azeroth or Azoth? Isn't Azoth the travel currency in New World? I don't actually know what's happening. And so you could tell the story of Dragonflight as a new player. And yes, they don't have a relationship with Wrathion and all that, but it's a decent starting place. And they don't have to ask questions about some sword that nobody knows about. It's fine. And so I think that what Dragonflight did was it built an expansion that so far has proven that I think it can age well. Shadowlands never felt like it was going to age well. Exile's Reach felt like it was going to age well, and so that I was excited about that. If you go back and watch my videos going into Shadowlands, I said, this expansion could be a total failure, but Exile's Reach would be good, but I don't think it will be, and that's where I was wrong. I thought, man, if they can give us Exile's Reach, just imagine how good Shadowlands can be. I stand by the Exile's Reach part. It's very, very, very good. But now we put Dragonflight in there, and then they join us at 11.0. This is a very good thing. So to new players, yes, it did not really do a great job of getting you out of Exile's Reach and into Dragonflight. That narrow little gap, you're gonna have to sprint yourself, and I'm sorry, it's not that bad compared to what some other games ask of you, but that doesn't mean it's great. But you could also just wait 2 years and hopefully that fixes it. So I don't know. I recommend you play WoW now, but it probably gets better in 2 years.
This on our recent podcast video where we ran the deep run tram a couple of times. But the thing is, although we got all these amazing new features with Dragonflight on the Dragon Isles, the updated professions, the evoker class, like although we got all this upgraded stuff, if you're a new player, you just now start playing the game and you're like, okay, I'm gonna make a level 1 character. I'm not ready to make some max level, free boost guy and play him. Sure. I'm just gonna start at the beginning and work my way up. If you start at level 1 and you're doing those early game professions and you're going through the world, none of this stuff exists. I was hoping when they said, oh hey, yeah, we're gonna do this big profession update system, I thought that was gonna impact the early game as well to make professions more relevant while you're leveling up a new character.
That would be awesome, but there is no way I expected that.
I don't think they're ever gonna be more relevant. Unless you can craft gear that levels with you, you're going to outlevel the gear so fast that it won't matter.
Imagine if you had knowledge and then you had the little time-worn tokens and all of, oh my god. Going and getting old recipes would be so fun. If I could start to do all these different things and I could create twink gear and heirloom gear was now my base level, but I could make better, that would be so cool. I literally never even thought about that until now. At no point did I think that anything they did with crafting and gathering in an upcoming expansion would impact the old, because it never has. Crafting and gathering in World of Warcraft not only does not pay homage to where it came from, it feels like they pull a random set of devs who are very talented and care about World of Warcraft off of whatever project they're working with, and they say, you, come with me. And then they lock them in a room and they say, you're not allowed to log in game. You're not allowed to use Wowhead or watch any videos. You need to design the new crafting and gathering experience, and we will not let you out of this room until you do. And then they design it totally in a vacuum, and they have at no point ever taken a lesson from one crafting and gathering system and carried it into the next. We've had primals before, but they didn't quite work like this. We had the scrapper. Do you remember that? That was weird. We've had the time-worn artifact shenanigans just launched over all of them. We've had things locked behind rep grinds. We've had expansions where trainers basically teach us everything. We had the tools of the trade or whatever they were called back when you had to 1, 2, and 3-star recipes. It's random. It's always random. Sometimes you can't even gather certain nodes. Oh, if you go gather a node in Legion and you're not good enough, you can gather it for the purpose of leveling up, but you're just going to get little essence of it. You're not going to get the actual thing because you're not high enough. Do other expansions work like that? No, they don't. It's fine.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah, it's just going to be so fast because you level and you get the gear, and then by the time that you use it for an hour, it's just not a time efficient way to spend your time.
alt to make it more fun, but unfortunately that's not the case. Really, it's the biggest con of Dragonflight in that if you're a new player, the early game really didn't get touched at all with this expansion, and that's a shame because I've made multiple videos on this channel talking about it. I probably will make some more in the near future, but the early game of World of Warcraft, it's really bad right now, and I feel that Blizzard really should take an opportunity to make an expansion or a patch or something that really shows a lot of love to the alt levelers, a lot of love to the new player, because your game is not going to grow if when the person walks in the door and makes their first character, they're presented to a bunch of garbage, a bunch of boring gameplay.
That's why Exile's Reach is so good, because that's not what they're presented to. Like, the vast majority of what is included in the free trial is covered by Exile's Reach. Like, Exile's Reach is going to be where they spend most of their time. Exile's Reach is a great job, so I don't disagree that it would be awesome if they could build a bridge from Exile's Reach to current content. I think Dragonflight is that bridge. You can't just push people out of Exile's Reach into Dragonflight while that's where we all are, because then they're going to hit max level. But if that's what carried you to 10 levels below max, so you were still in a very learning-based place, and then you got to join us in 11.0, whatever that ends up being, I think that would be amazing.
Play, right? I mean, come on. So that's my big negative with Dragonflight. Everything else is overwhelmingly positive, aside from some floating nodes, some scaling issues, and so on and so forth. So there's really not much to complain about with Dragonflight.
I feel like if you compare this, here's one easy way to say it, is if you compare this list of situations with how, let's say, I don't know, how Shadowlands was on release, or how BFA was on release, or anything like that, I think this does very clearly indicate that it's a lot better than it was.
When your biggest complaint is that a node is still harvestable but breaks your immersion by being up in the world, as somebody who said, I hate story and I just want to skip it and get to power progression, but it ruined my world immersion that the ore is up here. If that's your biggest complaint compared to having to do 90 million dailies so that you can go back through a Maw intro on an alt because you want to experience a different covenant on the same class because you want a PvP as a different spec than you want a PvE, this is... it's ridiculous. You are focusing on well, there's a loose thread on my napkin and this restaurant is ruined. This is unbelievably nitpicky. And so I don't know if he makes one of these for every expansion. And if so, keep doing that. For 11.0, after however many weeks goes by, make another one. But I think what's interesting is if he made one of these for Shadowlands, they were probably issues that it's I don't even know how they would fix that. You are asking for something that is wildly flawed, is very bad for the player, and is basically unfixable without just reworking the game from the ground up. And here you're talking about, it'd be cool if they changed a couple of little things that graphically don't look great. It'd be cool if they went through and continued to balance classes like they were already going to do anyway. It would be cool if they started investing in content that they have no history in investing in because the current content is doing well enough on its own. This list of complaints is so small compared to what Shadowlands would have had or BFA would have had, which define recent history for World of Warcraft, that if anything, this video is a huge compliment to Dragonflight. And I think that's what he's saying. This is a compliment. I sat down and I tried to come up with the top 5 because those are one of the numbers you have to use for the YouTube algorithm. And so I came up with the top 5 biggest fails, and I went to sleep on it, and I stayed up on it, and I thought about it through the day. I almost ran off the road while thinking about it in traffic. I was thinking about it in the grocery store. I ended up buying some weird stuff by accident. I stared off blankly while my spouse stared across the table and said, "Are you paying attention to me?" I said, "No, I'm trying to think about the 5 biggest fails of Dragonflight." And after days, the worst things I could come up with are, sometimes, if some people gather on some nodes, the node appears like it's not perfectly grounded in the world. Okay, but did you come up with any bad things? That one. That's got to count. That's got to be one. Some classes sometimes are a little bit powerful in some content, in some contexts. But isn't that always true? Mm-hmm. And don't they plan on adjusting that throughout the expansion, even if it's not true? Yeah. And sometimes I feel like the systems are so cool in the current expansion that it would be cool if they also were relevant in the last expansion. I love them so much that I don't like that I can't take them into previous expansions. Has that ever been true in the past? No, that hasn't been true before. So like, this is a wildly positive post. This post right here, WoW Dragonflight's biggest fails so far, is one of the single best compliments to Dragonflight I have seen. It doesn't sound like some sellout that was paid. It's not just like, Dragonflight's gonna be your greatest RPG experience ever. No, it's, let me tell you what's wrong with Dragonflight. Not actually a lot.
Am I right about this? Yeah, like, I think that all of these concerns are relatively valid about, like, you know, how professions could be better for leveling. Sure, yeah, that could happen. And I think that, again, if Blizzard wants to do that, I think it's a relatively easy solution, to be honest. And, yeah, some from a WoW player. Fuck, where the hell is this? Let me read this again. And, bro, W's all around. Yeah, I would say so. I think that it's just better than the previous expansions. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't have any problems. It just means that the problems that it does have are not that big of a deal.
Cool.
You see kind of what I'm saying? Like, it just because you have a problem with something, it's the same thing that, like, Final Fantasy has this problem a lot whenever people identify something that could be better in the game, and then everybody else takes it as hate. Do you see kind of what I'm saying? I'm saying it's nitpicking and small thing. Chat, this is nitpicking, Riki. Yeah, it is a little bit nitpicky. And I think that, again, if you compare this to how Shadowlands or BFA was, it is just 1,000 fucking times better.
And imagine that you were preparing like a big presentation for work and you'd been working on it for weeks, you're multiple iterations in, and you ask a friend, is there anything else I could improve? And they come up with some small things. Hey, was that what you're going to be wearing? Could you wear something a little bit sharper? I think that would work a little better. And they just start nitpicking and you're like, dude, what the hell? You asked me for feedback. And so this video is a feedback video. And so I think like Nexium from that standpoint is saying, you're doing really great. I'm trying to think of 5 ways that you could be doing even better. I do have to reach a little bit. But like, here's where we're at. Because I don't actually think that any of these problems are a problem that is like game breaking. If they fix none of these, the expansion could still go down as one of the great expansions versus one of the ones that we wish we hadn't played. Like, they could leave all 5 of these exactly the way they are, and the game could still have success, could still be enjoyed, people would still have a blast, and that's a great place to be, where everything can only be taken from good to great. It's a wonderful place to be.
So I'm very glad about that. Let me go ahead and link you guys this video. Shill's saying L video. Yeah, I think it's overall good. Yeah, it is an overall good thing.
Cool. That was awesome.